Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Because I have to hold two devices. I didn't think about this. So, awesome. Grand, tough act to follow. And I know the food coma likely settling in right now. So, I want us all to just take a moment and describe to ourselves, how does this make you feel? What's your impressions? What about this one? How does this make you feel? What's your impressions of this brand? We have a gut reaction in 3 seconds or less. And that's because we can process emotions a fifth of the time it takes us to process logical thoughts. We think a lot more with our emotional mind than our logical. So take it to psychology a little bit. There's this concept of the logical and the emotional mind. And that means the one side of the brain, the logical, is what we process rational thoughts with. We can think rationally with that. The emotional side is where we process emotions. And the intersect of that is what's called the wise mind in psychology. And that is sometimes difficult to attain. Some people need to practice this. But it's when you are able to process emotionally, but then think about the decisions you want to make rationally in order to make a decision that's not going to have consequences later. Because if you think about thinking an emotional action that you might take, that's where things like crime and passion come in, not rational thinking. So you want to think with a wise mind, but not easy. Not everybody can do it consistently. What else is this process should actually kind of look more like this, because it's said that the logical brain actually came from the emotional brain. A lot of psychologists believe this theory, and so it's actually thought to be a little bit smaller. So in essence, we feel more than we think. We have way more connections from the emotional brain to the logical brain than we do from the logical to the emotional. And not only do we have more connections that make it go faster, we also feel more, they resound more our feelings than our logical thoughts do. So you might think that we have a lot of emotions. We have a lot of fancy synonyms for lots of different emotions. But really, a lot of psychologists believe that there's only really 4 core pairs of emotions. And those pairs can be distilled down to really just 4. Happy, sad, angry, and scared. And what I like most about this is that really, out of those 4, scared is really where it's at. Because at the end of the day, we're all what I like to call FOMO mofos. We all have this incessant fear of missing out. We're always wondering, oh, what are our friends doing looking on Facebook? Oh, maybe I shouldn't say no because I don't want to miss what's going on here. We have this incessant fear. So where does that take us to consumer behavior? What does all these emotions and feelings have to do with actually making purchases? Well, the thing is that we actually think emotionally throughout the whole purchasing journey, and they affect what we end up purchasing at the end of the day. So it's super relevant. For most of us, fear is a prime motivator when we're making decisions, and anxiety-ridden depending on the type of product. Everybody's a little bit more risk-adverse than others. Some people, they don't get really anxious when they're thinking about some purchases. Some are more risk-adverse. Me, for example, I love adrenaline. I love doing really scary things. I've been skydiving, but it took me 9 months to choose a rug because I was so anxious of making the wrong decision. It just very much depends on what type of project and what type of product it is. So all consumers have what I call a consumption matrix. And what this is essentially all products, services, brands, and commodities can be weighed on this matrix of, 1, do they have passion for the product? Do they like it or do they hate it on one axis? On the other is, how much is the perceived involvement of this? And some products obviously take a little bit more thought and investment, whether that's research or whether it's monetary. And so everything can kind of be plotted on this. So to give you an example of my interests, clothes, low investment for me, high passion, doesn't stress me out. Furniture, on the other hand, I get a little bit more anxious because I get this overwhelming feeling like I'm stuck with it. So while I love it, I still am a little bit anxious about it, and I take a lot of time, and I think of it as a high investment product. Cameras are another one. Really like cameras, a little bit more high investment. Car maintenance is one that I look at. Very high investment, don't like it. I get anxious really easily, really frustrated. I just want to go to Firestone and say, tell me what I should put on my car right now. Cable is one that I definitely don't like. Thinking about your cable provider, how am I going to get internet and cable? Shouldn't be a very high investment, doesn't take a lot of thought, especially because it's like a monopoly in Seattle, there's only 2 choices, but I don't like it, so this causes anxiety for me sometimes. You really want to understand your customer's matrix. You want to know where your products and services fit into the different types of personas you have. And knowing that is going to really help you identify your buyer cycle. So your buyer cycle is like the funnel, but I like looking at it as a cycle because the funnel is very top-down, linear, whereas really what the purchasing journey is like is it's more like a merry-go-round. People can come on and off whenever they want, depending how crazy they are, or they can stay on and just keep going around and around and keep purchasing from the same type of service and brand. So I like looking at it like this, but it's essentially the same type of concept as the funnel. So going through this presentation, I'm going to take you through the funnel and the different types of emotions we're feeling through the purchasing journey and give you tips and hacks and different types of ways that you can really speak to those emotions in order to influence them to not only purchase from you, but to hopefully become an advocate and a loyal customer down the road. So the first, how do we really get to know what our customers are thinking and align with where they're at when they're at play? Or really, how do we understand get consumers to understand and get to know our brand when they might not know what it is? The first step before we think about any kinds of emotions, you really need to understand where they hang out. That's going to help you target different types of topics down the road, and also can tell you a lot about their personality quirks, because certain types of communities have different types of people than others. So one of the first ways you want to understand where they hang out is just get a customer list. I really like doing this because all you really need is a list of emails that your sales team should be able to take out of Salesforce or whatever CRM that they use. You can then put it through a program like Full Contact, which is essentially, it looks across the web with just an email address and lets you know what the different social networks of those people are, what their names are, where they are, their job titles. That can be really relevant for B2B. And it also gives you what I like, what they call a likelihood score, which gives you how much you can trust their data, because John Smith is a very common name, so that might be a little bit lower of a score because it's hard for them to scrape the exact person, and people use different emails for different types of accounts. So you can put it through a program like Full Contact, you get all this information about your customers. And with that, if you're a B2B, you might really want to understand what the title and where they sit within the company that your customers are, because then you can understand a little bit more how much decision power they have, what their responsibilities might be, and so you can put it into a program like Wordle. You just throw in a bunch of words and it gives you kind of that scale to understand how many people are a certain type of job title. You can do Wordle for a lot of different types of text analyses. You can also use that Full Contact list to understand who the influencers are, because not only do they take the social channels that they have from Full Contact, but they also tell you how many followers they have collectively. So you can do a quick sort, understand who the top influencers are of your customers, and then you can do a lot with that information. One of my favorites to do is to put it into different kinds of social analytics tools. There's a lot out there, so I'm only going to go through a few. But some of my favorite is Follower Wonk is one of them. And one of my favorite resources to use on here is the ability to put different users in and find the intersect of the people they follow. So I put our friend Rand Fishkin and Will Reynolds and Will Critchlow in here because I wanted to understand what publishers are they following collectively, because that gives me an idea of the topics that they're interested in, gives me a little bit more of an idea of where they read, and your promotions team can also use that later to know where they should be trying to get coverage for, because then your influencers can see it later on. So from that, I found out that 2 or more of those 3 people find Freakonomics, Marketing Land, HBR, and so forth to be the publishers that they all follow. So understanding what kind of topics that they write about and what they find interesting on those publishing networks, that's a really big lead for me, and I can really understand the type of things that interest them. Another type of tool you can use is what's called Tweet Archivist. This isn't a free tool, but it's relatively cheap. I think it's about $15 a month. And what it does is you can put in different influencers, and it tells you the top URLs that they tweet, for example. And you can use there's an Excel SEO plugin, and that decodes bit.ly links. And so you can take all the top URLs that your influencers are tweeting about, and then you can do some Excel wizardry, and you can understand where those top publishers are. So this, again, lets you know where are they hanging out, what's their community, what do they find interesting, and you can use this for content development and outreach later on. So now you know where they hang out. You really want to figure out how can I get them to share my content, find it and then share it. Well, why do people share content? So there's lots of studies around about this, and especially now because there's been some recently. And we distilled it down to about 5 different ways that why you share. So you can do it because you want to feel involved. This is especially true when newsy events. You see a lot of people are tweeting about certain kinds of news, say the World Cup, and you want to tweet about it and be involved in it. You can also be doing it to educate others. You might know somebody that a piece of content is relevant to, and you might share it, maybe tag them, educate them a little bit. You might do it to support a cause. What I find to be the 2 most prevalent reasons are the nourishing the bonds and to define yourself. And that's because sharing content has become a form of gift giving. So we are hardwired to all be gifters in one way or another, because the first gift that we give is that social smile to our mom when we're a baby. And that releases some chemicals that makes it so that we are bonded with our mother. And it's the same kind of thing where we are sharing content. We're bonding with our followers. We're hardwired to do this kind of stuff. So staying classy to ourselves, we don't only give gifts to actually make somebody happy, we also do it to define ourselves, which is kind of interesting. We use it as a way to let that person know, yeah, you might be interested in, but I chose this because it's also a reflection of me. So to apply this back to content, give you an example, I took this quiz recently and I got New York City, the where should I live? So this is really relevant to me because my sister and I are from New Jersey and we moved to Seattle, and we have this kind of running joke among us that Seattle has made us soft. We are no longer as aggressive as we once be. We're not as fun as drivers, and we probably couldn't win in a bar fight like we used to when we lived in Jersey. So I shared this, I tagged my sister, and everybody on Facebook saw, and then my family back in New York, and they were like, yeah, you're so from New York, you're Jersey. And it was awesome. I shared this gift with my family because it was defining who I am, nostalgic character traits. So not only knowing why do they share is helpful, but you want to know what do people share. So again, there's been a lot of studies about this recently, and it's kind of had 3 main themes out of all these studies. The one being that we really like positive messages. The second, we really like long-form content. And the third is that we will also share content if it physically excites us. So we like spreading cheer, we like positive messages. Thinking about going back to gifting, we never really try to give a gift, whether it is about ourselves or not, that will make the recipient cry. That's just not why you give gifts. Very similar to sharing. Positive messages, wanna spread the cheer. But we also wanna look really smart. So if it's a topic that we're really passionate about, a long-form piece of content is going to look much more thoroughly thought out. It might be really well cited, and it just makes us look a lot smarter, frankly, if we're sharing really long-form content. And so that's why there's some preferences there. But all that being said, these are correlations. They're not necessarily fact, because excitability will trump that positive versus negative emotion. And what I mean by that is that there could be a piece of content that actually is negative and makes people very angry. But anger is an emotion that excites us physically. We get hot and heated, and that kind of emotion can cause us to share something. And that's a lot more so than an emotion like sadness, which is negative, but it doesn't excite people physically. What happens with sadness is kind of like a depressant. You shut down, and so that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll share something. So all of these emotions aside, content needs to have emotion, whether negative or positive, because research also found that content that's neutral doesn't perform as well as if it's emotionally charged, whether or not it's positive or negative. So emotional content really helps trump that sharing and gift giving among our communities. To give you an example, this is when Oscar Pistorius, he is a Paralympic sprinter, he's very famous, and he got, if you haven't heard, he has been alleged murdered his girlfriend. and he's in trial right now, and there's this betting company in the UK called Paddy Powers, and they decided it would be a good idea to open up a bet that people could place bets on whether or not he would be found guilty or not guilty. And if he was found not guilty, all the bettors would get their money back. This was a huge there was a huge outcry about this in the UK. It was actually banned from the advertising committee there, and it was the most hated advertisement of all time. It cited a lot of anger from a lot of people. So it can excite a lot of sharing and coverage if it angers people enough physically. So all these emotions aside, remember this is all general guidelines, not hard, fast rules. Every single person's different, and there are some kind of caveats to this. One being, when you're writing with emotion, regardless of if you're going positive or negative, you want to make sure that an emotion aligns with your brand, because consumers are pretty distrusting of brands, especially after the recession, that people see through that kind of PR stunt type behavior. So you want to make sure that it kind of aligns. And also with that long form content, that's not a hard rule at all either. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of your content should be really, really long. And if you do make it long, you want to make it skimmable as well. But I suggest to change it up and not have all the same types of content on your site. And also don't underestimate the value of reputation and trust. Because remember, when we're sharing something, that's sharing a piece of ourselves, and we want to look smart, and we don't want to look stupid among all of our friends and family. And if we share a piece of content that ends up not being true, false, or defamatory or whatnot, that makes us look bad. And so we do give preference to brands and sharing content that we trust. And it doesn't only have to be brand recognition, but those kind of trust signals, like is the article well researched? Are there kind of those attributions, and are other people sharing it? Those trust signals. So don't underestimate that as well. So that's kind of where we're at when we're at the discovery phase, before we decide we need to look for a solution to get a product or service. So how do we align with them when they're looking for these different types of solutions? Really, we want to understand, how do we get in front of them when they're searching for these solutions? And thinking about where consumers are at, again, we're FOMOs, we are afraid of making the wrong decision, and so we look to make a decision based off of a lot of different information sources, where really we're just trying to corroborate information from a lot of different areas before we make a decision. So we get it from a lot of different places. It could be from the brand website, it could be from other users, other experts. But what makes it a little bit more difficult, than not only are we corroborating and trying to find all this different information from a lot of different places, we're also trying to understand which has more weight. And so consumers, depending on the type of product, will give more weight to some attributes and some information sources over others. So to give an example, Nielsen did a study that looked at these three variables: the expert advice from third party, not related to the brand, looking at user reviews, and then looking at the brand website. And they had found that over most of the time, they always really trust expert advice not in third party. Most people do not trust brands when they give information because they think it's not going to be unbiased. What makes this more complicated is that kind of switches up depending on the product. So while that's kind of a generality, for products that are a little bit more specific with the tech specs, such as cameras, people tend to trust the brand websites more because they want to know that the information is true about what the product offers, and there's no better place to get that than directly from the manufacturer. So camera specs is a really good example of this. But for products where consumers have a high product knowledge, they trust user reviews more so than other forms of information. A good example of this is gaming. People tend to have a lot of product knowledge of games if they're really enthusiastic about it, so they trust other gamers over those other experts in the brand website. So it's a little bit complicated, but they generally will look for information from a lot of different sources. And so what do you want to do? You want to identify their questions and where they tend to look, because you want to also figure out how you can not only answer the questions on your site, but on other people's sites. Because you're not going to be able to put only information about you on your own site. Might be opportunities to have campaigns for other experts to talk about your brands. Thinking about camera again, PC World's a big one. PC World, where the authors are talking about a camera, that's great for your brand and it's unbiased compared to if you're saying the same thing on your own site. So the first thing to do to get to understand what their questions are, ask your sales and support team. Don't mean to be trite with this, but a lot of brands don't do this, especially if they're really big. It's mind-boggling. But they have so much intimate knowledge of this because they do it every day. An hour interview is so helpful, just asking them those types of questions. But if you don't want to talk to them, you can also try to collect live chat logs. This is a way you can kind of analyze what are the themes. It's just a lot more work because it's not very easy to analyze text like this. But it's a good way to try to understand what are the most common questions. Another way is in Google Analytics, using that internal site search function. You can understand where people are going when they're going to your site and typing that little search bar. You can understand what are they searching for, and then that can give you ideas of, am I actually answering that question or am I not? You can interview your customers, simply asking them, having them take you through their purchasing journey. I like to send out surveys and try to find people who were customers in the past 3 months. The purchase is more fresh in their mind, and so you can ask them to take you through why were you looking for a solution, what were kind of the considerations you were looking for, where were you looking for that information, and that is also very helpful. It gives you a lot of information that you can't always get from those more robust data sets, so interviewing is a great option. If you can't use your own customers, you can also use things like user testing. Usertesting.com is generally used for CRO. You can use it to kind of understand what people don't understand. It can really help you improve the functionality and the architecture of your site. But because they're talking through their process and because you can designate what the actions are that they do, you can ask them to, hey, just find a product on my site and tell me what kind of questions are you asking, what's your thought process, what are you looking for? And this is be a way to understand what's their search process, what questions are they asking, and you can figure out if that is on your site or not. So not only do you want to understand what the questions are and all that, as they get further along, you want to figure out, okay, how can I actually get them to buy from me after I've hopefully given them this information that they trust? So you want to make it easy to convert. Going back to all those choices, doing a lot of information from a lot of different resources, we get a lot of times what's called analysis paralysis. And that is where we're just so overwhelmed with choices, like me and that rug, that you just don't make a decision, or you make the wrong one, or it just takes you a really long time. And research has shown that this kind of analysis paralysis is more common for people when, one, they are just more prone to get anxious. Some people are like that over others, but also the knowledge of the product. So people who aren't as knowledgeable about a product, if they are also anxious prone, that's the type of people that are likely to get more overwhelmed. So understanding your different personas and where they kind of sit, and if they're knowledgeable or if they're not, that can be really helpful to the type of messaging that you give them when you're marketing. So there was a contributor to HBR, and they came up with this design, this Decision Simplicity Index, the study, where they tried to rate brands based on how easy it was to navigate the purchase for them. And the 3 variables that they decided upon were navigation. Is the site easy to navigate? Is there signals on the site that instill trust? Now, this isn't just market research and data. This can also be the form of user reviews and also just descriptive product descriptions and telling you what it's used for. And also comparison. Is there an easy way for people to compare products or services? Because that is also a way to help a consumer make a decision a lot quicker and a lot easier. So from that, they found that the top quarter were 86% more likely to be purchased by the consumers considering them, and they were also 9% more likely to repurchase and 115% more likely to be recommended to others if these brands scored high on that decision index. So not only does this help you make sales, it could also impact that referral program, that retention, and really building that flywheel of building up your business and loyalty. So making it easy to convert, there's a lot of tools out there. User testing was one of them, where you can use the different type of information you get from the users in that testing platform. You can also use a tool called Crazy Egg, if you're not familiar with it. This lets you give heat maps of your website based on where people are looking. So this is a great tool. They're not looking at your convert purchase buttons. That could be a problem, so want to look at that. Qualaroo is another good example. This is a service that lets you survey your customers directly on the site. It could be either in the form of a pop-up asking them, did you find what you're looking for? You can also put it on, say, your checkout page, which is a great opportunity for them to candidly tell you what almost made you not purchase today. They already purchased, there's no risk in you losing the sale. So that's one way you can use Qualroom. So making it easy to convert, really important. But you want to figure out, how can I get them to be a part of the community? And at this point, you're probably hopefully already looking for opportunities to get them to be part of your community, encouraging them to share content they see on social before they buy. Maybe they're logging in and signing up for an account. So hopefully they're already maybe thinking about it. But if they're not, and this isn't something that you're actively doing, one way you can look to get people to be part of your community is to ease buyer's remorse. So remember, all of those choices, that's really overwhelming to us, and it's proven that more choices makes it more likely that people will regret their decision of a purchase later on. And so in order to ease that, you can do a lot of different things to help appease them and let them know you made the right decision. And email is kind of a gold mine for this, because 78% of us will open order confirmation emails. And so that's an opportunity to continue engaging with them, not just to let them know, hey, your purchase is on the way, but ask them to do some other things. So Evans Cycles, they are a UK bicycle company, and they're just killing it right now. They do a lot of really cool things. So once somebody makes a purchase with them, they will email them about biking events that are in the area. It's like, hey, welcome to the community. You just see you got a new bike. Here are some biking events. You can go meet fellow bikers and join them and talk about your bikes or whatnot. So another thing they're doing is having them prompt to join their community, but they also reveal perks that aren't on the site. So there's the surprise element of joining this community that you get all these perks you didn't even know about. And also they're giving them opportunity for a free bike tune-up. And all of this is happening within the first 3 to 4 days before, right after purchase. And so they're really, really leveraging email as a channel once they've made that purchase to really help them not be remorseful about their purchase, and to hopefully get them to join the community. So some other ways that you could ease that remorse is connecting them with those customers with a similar purchase. It could be like those bike events, or it could be just saying, hey, we noticed that you purchased this, here's some reviews about that, and here's some people talking about their experience. You can even go a step above and say, hey, we can connect you with those people, and you can create a program where people opt in to be connected to new purchasers, especially if this is a high consideration product. Might be a good idea. Another idea is suggesting creative uses for the products. So this is something I don't see often, but it's something that I wish a lot of companies did. I think interior design and fashion are a really good example of this. I had mentioned that the furniture is really, really important to me. I like furniture, I like home decor. Room and board is one I really like. And one of the things that I would do is I would look for opportunities to say, hey, I saw you just bought this couch, and actually make content that shows that couch in different types of designs, help them with layout, help them planning. And this could also help with the sale, but you don't even have to talk about the other products that can help make the room complete. Just by that utility, you can really help them, show them that they made the right choice and that they can really use this in a functional and aesthetically pleasing way. Another way is those exclusive discounts or events, making them say, hey, you didn't just buy a product, you get a lot of other perks for joining our family. And then those anticipated questions and building content around things that they might not know what to do, and they might panic when they have questions, but if you pre-deliver, that's one way you can really ease that remorse. So hopefully they're starting to think, okay, we're gonna join your community, you know, I really like the perks, I like this brand, I had a good experience, but having a good experience and really wanting to be turned into an advocate and to be a loyal purchaser, that's a big jump from there. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but it all goes back to this consumption matrix. So looking at mine again, so right now, all commodities right here, and a lot of these kind of commodities everybody has their matrix filled with a bunch of different services and products, but it takes a lot for that to actually start being filled with brands. And for me, some of them that have really stood out, and I actually equate clothes, for example, with J. Crew, and furniture with West Elm, those brands have really stood out for me. And those are now synonymous with what they sell. And it's the first thing I think of when I know I need to purchase something new for my home, or if I want to buy new clothes. So I was thinking, what makes that happen? Why do commodities get turned into brands on people's consumption matrices? What happens there? So I went to Twitter, and I wanted to know, it's something I've been thinking about. Maybe it has to do with relationships. People start building relationships. Then I started thinking, do consumers actually want relationships? You know, I think marketers think this sounds great. Yeah, build relationships, but do consumers actually want it? And so Rand was one of the first ones to reply, and he said, absolutely, definitely think so. And he even mentioned some of the brands that he's super enthusiastic about. Uber, which is big in Seattle, they do a lot of local community stuff, and also Alaska Airlines is a big one. So I asked him, okay, why do you like having a brand relationship with them? And he went on to talk a little bit more about the types of attributes that he liked about those specific ones that he had mentioned. And he said authenticity, friendly, they're caring, they are trustworthy, high quality. And he named all these different types of really great attributes. I'm like, maybe some people do want to have a relationship. Another marketer, Sean Smith, had said, you know, I do want to have a relationship with brands, but I tend to only have a relationship with brands that their values align with my own. And so I was like, okay, well that's interesting. And he went on to explain, like, he really loves Nutella because he loves hazelnut and he loves everything they stand for, about there's only like 3 ingredients in there. So that viscerally aligns with him. But then there are others that said, no, people don't want relationships. It's all about the product, this one guy said. He's like, that's really what's important. At the end of the day, you have to have a great product. Another one was a little bit on the fence, and she was like, oh, I don't know about relationship, maybe more of an affinity is what I kind of like, because if I give somebody my money and my recommendation, I hope I actually like them at the end of the day. And my friend Joel, he was like, yeah, you know, I think a relationship can work, but only if the brand knows when to kind of back off. And another one was saying, I'm gonna say no, I don't think consumers actually want a relationship. But then he went to also say, but I think that they don't know they want a relationship, because then they still purchase from one company over another. And he gave the example of GoPro over Sony. So it's kind of a really complicated conversation that everybody has differing opinions on this. So I did some research, and there's been studies, and according to these studies, consumers say they do not want a relationship. This was one that was done, and they compared what businesses say their customers want versus what consumer says, and pretty much on the bottom was joining a community. They have no interest. They were like, we don't want to build a relationship with you. And I was like, oh, you know, okay, maybe they don't want a relationship. But then there was another study that also showed that most people don't care if all the brands of tomorrow, majority, just disappear. And I was like, oh, that's kind of scary. I'm in marketing, but okay. And so this company is called Havas Media, and they made what's called a meaningful brands. They did this index, and they ranked all the global brands. They did this crazy study, a crazy large one, and they found this, that 73% of people don't care about brands and don't care if they go away. So I was like, oh, well, they definitely don't want a relationship. You know, after thinking about it some more, I think that I personally agree with these two, that I don't think relationship is the right word. I think most people will say that they don't want a relationship. Affinity is probably a better word. They have preferences. But I also think that people don't necessarily know what they want. And so that brand relationship, like you have a relationship with brands, you don't even really know it. And whether or not you call it a relationship or affinity is your own preference. So I kind of align with these ones. And then I had that opinion, and then I found, when reading further on that meaningful brand study, that of those meaningful brands, only 20% of the world's global brands actually are meaningful according to their study. And those top brands outperform the market by 120%. So there is something there, and people do care about brands. And it's what about these brands that make them meaningful, and what makes these people want to have a relationship and affinity, or at least be repeat purchasers or advocates for them. And these were the top 10 of the top 25 that they listed, starting at Google and going crisscross across the top and then the bottom. So Google's number one out of all those meaningful brands. They've changed our lives. So something to think about. But all of those conversations kind of be distilled down into really 3 attributes that really help turn a purchaser into either a repeat purchaser or a loyal person or an advocate. And that is about the product, the customer service, and then the brand values. So first, creating a good product. Number 1. I'm just gonna come out and say it. If you have a shit product, it's not going to work. You're going to fail. I just said that because I really believe this. And that's because there are websites out there that just, I found this, I don't even know what this is. They make a site and they just talk about products that they found. Either they don't work from experience or they just make fun of products that they think are funny. So that people will write about it if your product is bad. And what's the point of putting all this money into marketing and then people come and they have your product and it breaks? It's a poor experience. They're going to write about it. All of that money is going to be for nothing. So product, you do need to have a product that's good. And I say good, it doesn't need to be the best, and it doesn't need to be great even. If you ever read any interviews with Steve Jobs, one of his most famous ones he talks about is a great idea is one thing, but that's not what makes a company or a brand work. It's really great execution. And he talks about what it really is all about is that you just put something out there, it's an idea, you execute on it, and you just keep iterating the hell out of it until it goes from okay to great one day. That's what makes a company work. And so product, you can't forget about having a good product experience. Again, not great, but at least good. So customer service is another one. You want that to be on your priority list, and that's because people will talk about if you have bad customer service. So you can have great product, you have great marketing, but if your employees treat your customers like crap, people are going to write about it. I'm sure none of us want Time and Business Insider putting us on their top worst customer service list. It's just not good business. It's not going to be worth all the dollars we put into it at the end of the day. We want to be the brands that are talked about. Want to be the brands that are doing something that people can get behind. This picture, it looks like it might be a bust, but what's actually happening is that's the CVS van. They actually have a Good Samaritan van program in their 9 biggest metro markets. And what they do is they literally find people stranded on the road and they help them out, change their tire or whatnot, whatever's happening. And what's really interesting about this is they don't actually advertise it that much. And they actually sent a press release and it said, we've been doing this for 30 years. And I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. And it's just this kind of random act that they're doing. They have good customer service and they're taking it out of the store here. And one of the things they're really leveraging here is reciprocity. This concept that we give back people who give to us. And just think about how deeply reciprocity is ingrained in us. Just try walking down the street and somebody saying hi to you and not saying hi back. You might not do it, but then you'll walk away and you'll feel so uncomfortable and guilty that it's just really awkward for you. And it might not ruin your day, but you'll feel it. And it's just so ingrained in our culture, and there's actually been studies that there is no culture in the world that does not have reciprocity in one way or another. And so CVS, what they're doing is they are hoping that one day, the CVS patrons who got their services will remember, and they'll maybe purchase, tell a friend, or even just remember when somebody brings up CVS, they'll be like, oh yeah, this happened to me once. Another great company doing this is Zappos. They do a lot of great things customer service-wise, so I highly recommend you looking into what they're doing. But one thing they do is a surprise form of reciprocity. So when somebody purchases 3 to 4 days, what they do is they automatically upgrade it without telling them, so they get their package really quick. It's this nice little perk. People get their shoes really fast, and they're happy. And this is a subtle, secret form of reciprocity that people might not even notice that's what's happening, but they feel that, and they could feel the need to reciprocate in one way or another. And it could be buying more shoes, or it could be telling somebody about it. Another one is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. They had a kid left a little pet giraffe there, and their employees actually just went on this manic vacation with this giraffe, and they took pictures across their whole resort, and they just sent a letter and said, hey, this is your giraffe's vacation with all these pictures. And they didn't write about it, they didn't publicize it, but that family did. And it went super viral. People were talking about this. They took it to the next step, and they used it as a way to get really great PR coverage from it. And that's one way you can make customer service do work for you in building that advocacy. So product, customer service, those brand values. You want to stand for something. What I mean by that is you want to have your core values out there and you want people to know what they are. Chipotle is doing this right now. They talk about food with integrity. They talk about getting locally sourced ingredients for their food and having kind of a soul with the food that they are making. So when you're developing this, these are just some questions that I like to ask during these sort of exercises. They're hard, they're abstract, they can be super frustrating. You probably answer them, but chances are they're not concrete enough when you come up with your first answer, or they're not specific enough. So this can be a really frustrating exercise, but these are the kind of questions you want to ask is, what is our product doing that's making the world better? What problem are we trying to solve? And you can really start understanding what your core values are, and then you can learn, what does our company stand for? And so when you do these kind of exercises, I highly recommend doing it with not just yourself or your marketing team, doing it across your company, getting a lot of different perspectives. And it'll be really exciting to see what you get. And the bonus, it could be a nice morale lift and reminding everybody why they work there. So once you stand for something, you figure out what that is, you want to turn that into a brand experience. And what a brand experience is a tangible manifestation of your brand and your values. To give you an example is Amex. They talk about small business. They're all about small business and whatnot, but that didn't really become true until they started making Small Business Saturdays. This is a quote from an article that I read in Inc. about 2 months ago, and I linked to it here. Highly recommend it. It's one of the best articles I've read this year. It's talking all about the brand experience and how this agency from Partner in Spade in New York developed these kind of experiences for their clients. Another one of their clients is Warby Parker. They describe themselves as kind of conscientious, cool, with this little literary librarian, Professor Flair. And so they decided to overhaul a school bus and do a road show with their interiors being all kind of old professor book library-like, and just gave people the opportunity to experience that giving back of buying a pair and giving a pair away in person, because they're an online place to glasses, excuse me. So they took their brand values and they made it into a tangible experience that people can touch and feel. So those examples, they're all about these kind of big investment ideas of, well, we're going to go on a road show, and oh, we're going to do all these things that are in person and cost a lot of money, but it doesn't have to be that. You can have the brand experience be digital, and West Elm, one of my faves, does this really well. They have their brand values, the 10 things to know about us on their site, and big among those are they like to design compact spaces, and they like to move around furniture a lot and play around with things. And so they've developed this tool, Room Planner, where people can go in and put in their specs and actually see what it would look like to scale, and they help them design their furniture. So you can really put your brand values into an experience digitally as well. And also, one thing to note is when you're thinking of your brand experience, you're looking for ways to make it tangible, this isn't only something you want to do after purchase. This should be happening throughout your whole buyer cycle. And I really like the way Joanna Lord describes it through this visual in an ebook that Big Door made. You can link to it at the end afterwards. But they really talk about how you should really be looking for ways to start seeding that idea of community and retention throughout the buyer cycle, even before they become a customer. But even so, if they already are a customer, maybe you didn't get them the first time and they're going back through that merry-go-round cycle, second opportunity to get them. So really want to be thinking about how you can manifest your brand experience throughout the purchasing cycle. So lastly, rally your community. Once you kind of figure out ways to do that brand experience, one way to do that is referral programs. Dropbox does this super, super well. So well, in fact, that people write about how to use their referral programs to get more storage space. That's kind of just crazy for me that people are hacking their referral program in order to get more storage space for themselves. And that is really, truly a successful referral program. That's something that you can look into doing. Also, other ways that you can rally them, gamifying the experience if they join, looking for Foursquare is a really good example of this. Everything's a game there, getting badges and the mayor of certain places. You can sign up, have them sign up for market research for perks. Lucky Magazine does this really well. I'm a part of it, I'm part of a panel, and they just give me stuff for taking surveys. And this could be great for understanding your customer experience and whatnot, those earlier parts of the funnel that we're talking about. That's a great way to do it. You can have user-generated content. ASOS does this really well. They're a fashion company, and they have all these calls to actions and ways to visually show how you styled a piece of clothing that they purchased. And then also reward programs are another way you can do this. Starbucks is a really good example. Buy something, you get some stuff back. So all of this, you might be saying, oh my God, that was a lot of emotions flying around. It is a lot, and it's difficult because every single person is different. But what you can do is take this kind of information and really ask the right questions to understand your different customer segments and know where they're at, what are they feeling when they're going through that person journey so that you can market effectively to them. You can give them better customer service, and at the end of the day, you can probably make a better product and a better brand experience for them. So here's your email marketing checklist, the takeaways. So big one, we feel before we think. So look for ways to make people feel with the content you create. Positive is a way to skew, but really feeling anything is a really great way to get people into your cycle, your buyer cycle. You want to know your customers, their questions they're asking, their consumption matrices. You want to know where FOMO mofos, and you really want to figure out how we can ease that buyer's remorse and really develop a good product, customer service, and brand experience at the end of the day. So thank you.